Hey, what is up, Warriors? It's the Quadfather here, and this is the inaugural episode of Quadfatherly Advice. But before I get too far into this thing, I want to ask you guys a question. School has been starting this week for a lot of people, and sometimes for some people it's coming up sooner. But was there ever a Call of Duty map that actually had a school in it? Now, as far as I was thinking on the multiplayer maps of all the Call of Duties I've played, I can't think of one that took place in a school. But then I got to thinking, you know what? There is one that has a slide and a merry-go-round. Kind of a playground, really. Not really a school. And I can imagine why Call of Duty people did not put a school in a first-person shooter war game. You know, I think they get enough bad press for the Terminal debacle, where I think it was even outlawed in Russia or something like that. You know, so I can imagine if they put a school grounds on the Call of Duty maps. So I will give you the answer to which Call of Duty map has the merry-go-round in the slide at the end of this. But now I want to get into Quadfatherly advice. You know, as I got to thinking with school starting this week, friendships are so very, very important, especially when you're in high school. I mean, it's a natural time where parents take a second seat or come in number two to your friends. And that's the way it should be. I mean, it's the way I see with Caleb, even though what you guys see is he and I doing stuff together. Really, most of the time he's out with his friends, which is why I get the opportunity tonight to kind of take over and give a little Quadfatherly advice. So I'm going to do that, and it's going to be about friends. So what kind of people do you hang out with? You know, we talked a little bit about in one of our earlier episodes that you know, that there are a bunch of different groups on different campuses, whatever school you go to. You know, you kind of see people as the jocks or the cheerleaders or the chess club or the, you know, the nerds or the people who do really good in school. Or, you know, I mean, you could categorize people in all these different ways. But really what you see is a bunch of people hanging out together and people who have friends. And those friends can have good times and you can have good times with your friends and the jocks can have good times. I mean, they can all coexist, although oftentimes they don't. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about what it takes to be a good friend. Now, I'm not going to make this a boring little social whatever you might take in school. Hey, let's talk this, let's do that. No, I want to make this a little more interesting. You know, like what kind of people do you like to hang out with? I mean, when I was in high school, I hung out with the type of people that I thought I wanted to be like. And I looked at everybody else as they were in groups that, oh man, those groups suck compared to my group. You know what? I have started as an adult to hang out in groups of people that do the same things that I do because friendships are temporary, right? I mean, almost every friend I've had is gone by the wayside. I have a couple friends, actually. One goes back from 9th grade, so that's a pretty long time. But it's not bad that friendships are temporary. I mean, people move away. You know, there's only so many ways to stay in contact, and there's only so many people that you can stay in contact with. So knowing that friendships are temporary, you ought to be doing the things that you want to do. And that's, in order for people to want to hang out with you, you got to treat people in a nice way. So, you know, I always think of everybody else in the world as someone who's me, but in another set of skin. So I definitely have a lot more understanding for when people are goofy or have a bad day or say something that's rude to me. It's like, you know, I don't really take it personally. You know, if it's somebody that's really close and they're saying some harsh things, of course I'm going to take that to heart. And I'm going to, you know, after I get done maybe with my argument with them about how I'm not such a bad guy. Hopefully I'm not doing that too much, but you know, I'm going to think about what they said. And if it has some truth to it, I'm going to say, all right, you know what, at least to my heart, in my head, I might not tell them, but I'm going to say, you know what, that is something that I could work on. Even though it hurt, it stung, it was a little too close to home, maybe as a person I could continue to grow. And I hope that I continue to grow and learn more as a person all the time. So I'm encouraging you guys to do that. But in order to do that, you got to admit that you're wrong sometimes. And that's not very easy, especially not very easy for us guys. We don't like to admit that we're wrong. But you know what? Every time I've had someone admit that they were wrong to me, I was like, all right, well, yeah, that's cool. You know, hey, if you at least you understand that you made a mistake. And that was something that I learned, gosh, growing up. I think my mom actually used to say, although this is Quadfatherly advice. So Quadfather's motherly advice or whatever, Quadfather's mother's advice. She always said, do you want to be right or do you want to have a relationship? And that really stuck with me. I thought, you know what, so many times I get in these little arguments that where I just want to prove that I'm right and they were wrong, and I want them to admit it, and that's why I argue. So a lot of times I just kind of let people, if they're going to hold tightly to an opinion and they're going to say, all right, well, this is the right way, and they're going to get in a big argument about it, I'm like, all right, well, I'll let you be wrong. I'm not married to the idea that you actually need to believe the same as me, you know, because I always just look for points of agreement with people, or, you know, clarity, really. I look for clarity over agreement. You know, if I understand where they're coming from and they understand where I'm coming from, it's fine if we're different. You know, I don't want all my friends to be like me. I want them to be them. So I'm kind of rambling here, but I do have a couple clear points, and that is, when you are wrong, you just admit it. Just say, hey, you know, we all screw up. And the difference in the quality of the people that I hang out with and who I don't want to hang out with is when people screw up, they admit it. They say, gosh, yeah, sorry, I apologize. Wow, that is huge. And it's so easy to do, or easy to think about doing, but way harder to do when you're really in the midst of it. So I encourage people, hey, you know, if you're wrong, admit it. And when you're discussing things with people and you're looking for that clarity, I have a motto: learn to listen and listen to learn. So if you're actually listening to someone else, then, you know, you're going to have a lot more opportunity to at least understand where they're coming from. And maybe you don't agree, and that's okay. But if you're asking clarifying questions, if you're saying, so this is what you think and this is how you believe, you know what? People want to be heard. And maybe they aren't requiring that you agree with them. Maybe you just need to listen. And one of the best things that I've ever heard, I mean, not that I've ever heard, but I hear quite often from people, is the reason they like other people is because they listen to them. That's a powerful thing. So even if you're not agreeing, you can still listen. And I think that helps me and Quad MFT, or Caleb, in our relationship, because I listen. You know, when we get in an argument, he knows that I will listen to his point, that I fully understand what he's trying to say. And sometimes he can change my mind, but other times I say, yes, I understand what you're saying. However, I don't agree with you, and I have the final decision, so I'm the dad. So, and I think that the fact that we both get to speak our mind really makes it much easier for us to get along as a father and son, because, you know, we don't always agree, and I don't want him to agree with me all the time. Sometimes, to be honest, he'll make a point, and I say, you know what, that's a really good point. I can change my mind. But if he is being rude, oh boy, you know, he's not going to get what he wants, and we're going to get in a power struggle. So that's where, when you're in the midst of a disagreement, it's really, really important, and this is, of course, with your friends and anybody, I guess, family. It's really, really important not to be rude, because all of a sudden your parents will start to respond to you and your tone instead of what you're saying. And if you're with a friend or with your parents and they decide that they don't like your tone, and even though they may agree with your point, you're not going to win the argument. So, you know, that's just, you know, this is a little quad fatherly advice. Some things I've learned about relationships that have helped me, you know, not take it personal, to apologize, to admit when, you know, I make a mistake, to understand what other people's points are, even if I don't agree with them. So there you go. That's enough quad fatherly advice for tonight. But I wanted to get back to, what is the Call of Duty map that has the merry-go-round and the slide? Anybody know? Anybody know? All right, last chance to answer. Well, I'll tell you this way in my sign-off. See you on Skid Row. And yes, that's the answer to the quiz.